First, I'd like to say thank you very much for inviting me, and good morning to everybody. If I can, before I answer your question, I'd just like to comment that both what Prem said and what Greg said sound so much like Ireland in so many ways. And I know Prem referred to Ireland as part of an Anglo-Saxon competitiveness model. I think we're much more like Singapore, much less like the UK, you know, and even more so now. I don't have time to go into a long sort of discourse on Irish economic history, but what I would say is that we have had for 70 years now a very consistent approach to industrial and commercial policy in Ireland, which focuses on, well, first off, abandoning what we had in the first 20 years of our independence, 30 years of our independence, of protectionism, statist intervention in industry and commerce, and in the 1950s we overturned that. But since then we've had this very consistent policy of attracting FDI, and attracting FDI essentially for the sake of creating jobs. But as we've been doing that, we've also had a very, very strong attachment to innovation. And, I mean, Ireland is generally regarded around the world as being full of very creative people, writers, artists, and such. When you're in Ireland, you might not always feel that, to the same extent. But it is true that part of an essential part of our education system is to emphasize creativity. And that is something that has become more and more important as time has gone along. And it's something that is more and more recognized by the state. And, you know, we launched our first youth strategy, national youth strategy, in 2015. And within that strategy, we've got things like, you know, health, education, the economic status of young people. But we also have things like well-being, not in the sense of health, but well-being in the sense of belonging, fitting into society, and making a contribution to society through your creative activity. And all of that has helped us to attract the big new industries. So, I mean, we often talk about the fact that we have in Ireland, through FDI, all of the born on the internet companies. Elena mentioned the Web Summit, created in Ireland. In some ways outgrew Ireland.
That's competition, Your Excellency.
That's competition.
That's competition.
Competition.
Yes, that's global competitiveness right there.
And good luck to this one. But you know, we have Facebook, we have Google, and one of the reasons they come is, one, because we have a very attractive FDI and business regulatory environment. We are among the most business-friendly countries in the world. But also because we have the talent. And it's not just the engineering talent, which is essential, we also have the creative talent. We also have, and this is beginning to be a problem in Ireland, a very open migration policy. We're very, very open to bringing people in from around the world because we need them. We don't face the same demographic challenges that other parts of Europe do. We have the youngest population in Ireland, 33% of the population is aged under 25. But we are looking at falling fertility rates, we are looking at a challenge for the future, including in paying pensions and social security and such. But what challenges the young people face, in many ways, the same challenges that young people in Ireland have always faced. We still have high youth unemployment, in spite of the fact that, 70% of people by the age of 24 in Ireland have got some kind of a third level qualification, be it a university degree, technical diploma, or vocational training. But we're still running youth unemployment at about 14.6%, where the general population is around about 5%. And there are various government incentives in place to help to get those people into employment. I think it's a universal issue that getting your first job is always the most difficult. Once you get your first job, it's much easier to get more jobs. But the other big challenge that Irish people have faced over generations is the question of immigration. We used to call it the scourge of immigration. We now recognise that immigration can be a very positive thing as long as people come back. And they come back with talent, and they come back with, sometimes with capital, and they invest back home. The other issue in Ireland, which it's something of a taboo subject, I know in Egypt, but it's one which we face in Ireland, is suicide of young men. And it's a problem which the government is trying to address, and the National Youth Strategy was part of that, trying to address that. And this is one of the reasons we had this emphasis on well-being and sense of belonging. But those are the two sort of big challenges. In some ways, you could say these are first world problems, but they are issues. But the one other thing I would say is that we have, over the past 5 years or so, been working very, very hard to create a very positive startup culture and environment. And we have, over the past 5 years, invested close to 8 billion euro in young companies starting up.
And that is in government funding?
Government funding. Our enterprise agency, which is responsible for promoting exports, is one of the biggest venture capitalists in Europe because of this. But what this has also meant is that we have been sucking in talent, and we could be accused of draining talent from places.
Specific places or Europe specific?
Generally. But that is all part of our effort to maintain competitivity. And on that, I would say we prefer the IMD ranking because it ranks us higher.
Because the report is coming out at the end of this month, so yes. unless Charles Schwab spoke to you about it, yes, I think you're on the Global Competitiveness Index. I'm not sure, but I think it'll be around 3 or 2 as well.
You mentioned Brexit. For us, Brexit is a huge challenge. We are, as much as New Zealand, we're isolated. We're an island, and we're an island behind an island. Brexit is going to cause us huge difficulties in terms of accessing our main markets. The UK used to be a very, very important market for us. When we joined the EU in 1973, I think close to 60% of our exports went to the UK. Now it's less than 11%. But the UK was important as a land bridge to Europe. But since the idea of a referendum was first mentioned in the UK, we started contingency planning because we know referendums and we know they don't always go the way you plan them. And we, I suppose, have a suspicion that Britain would vote to leave. So we have been planning since then. And we've been, one of the very important parts of our planning is looking at new markets, expanding into new markets. And Africa is one of those. We've already expanded quite big in Asia, Southeast Asia. But Africa and South America are two new places to go looking for markets. And we're competing against New Zealand on milk, and I think we're doing quite well. And we're competing against Singapore on technology.
Especially after the floating of the Egyptian pound as well, and the dairy products from New Zealand. I think that gives you a competitive advantage, including proximity to the markets. But Your Excellency, without interrupting you,
sure.
What you were telling me is basically there's a lot for Ireland to learn from New Zealand's experience of the past 20 years, when the opposite is when the UK joined the EU. And I think they had to look for that. Actually, it was an emergency at that point. It wasn't even looking forward to contingency, but they survived it. And I think the parameters of the UK market in New Zealand is very similar today to what you would be facing. Am I correct on the comparison in a sense?
Well, to some extent, yes. But I think, we have been diversifying our markets. One of the reasons we joined the EU was because we recognized as a small country we had to trade. And the EU gives us that global access. So we have been diversifying our markets quite a lot over the past 40 years. But when we are looking to learn things, there are a few countries we look at. Singapore and New Zealand are two of them. And people would say, who are our competitors? Singapore and New Zealand are our competitors. And that says something about the nature of Irish trade, because in France and agricultural products, but only agricultural.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now, we've heard, welcome to Africa, everyone. Welcome to the future of the world. In my opinion, and a lot of economists' opinions, and a lot of government opinions, Africa is the future of the world. Now, Your Excellency, thank you very much for being here. I am honored. It's a pleasure to have the Embassy of Ethiopia with us, again, for the first time. And this is the second African country that has participated, despite the fact we were in Africa. This is the second African country. We had South Africa participate before, and today we have Ethiopia with us. Now, Your Excellency, you've heard, sometimes it's not so amazing to be developed, and it might be very nice to be at that point of comfort, growth, and development, not developed. So they're facing a whole set of different problems. And I can assure you, and you would know more than I do, that everybody is looking at Africa today. New Zealand is trying to find a way into Africa, Singapore, the same thing. I mean, each in their own, respective fields, logistics, digitization, agriculture products, so on and so forth. Now, we as Egyptians, we've come up and said we are the gateway to Africa, okay? Or we aspire to become the gateway to Africa and Africa's gateway to the world. And now that we have the African Union and we've got this free trade area that is happening, to be honest, I've seen ECOWAS, I've seen COMESA, I've seen over the years, Global Trade Matters we focused on Africa to the extent that we've stopped focusing on Africa, because we have doing business with Africa, doing business under COMESA. We ask, where does the problem seem to always happen? And in this case, there's a new attitude and a new energy in Africa today that, despite that I might be slightly pessimistic, that we can really come together and not compete against each other, but to compete together as a continent. I'm still optimistic that with this new energy we can do something. Now, Egypt's going on its own economic reform program. We've got our own challenges, we've got our own problems, and so does Ethiopia. But all of these challenges are opportunities. All of their challenges might be opportunities for us. How do you see it? How do you, from your personal perspective, not so much from a government perspective, but from a personal perspective, as an Ethiopian, as an African, where is this continent heading? And what do we need to do to take this amazing energy that we have, not just in Egypt, all of Africa basically has the same demographics. How can we utilize this to control our continent?
Thank you very much. Good morning, dear ambassadors, dear guests. I really want to express my happiness to be here, and I want to take this opportunity to be invited in this forum, because Africa is going to learn a lot from this forum. I believe we'll get something that could help our nation. First I want just to tell you something. If you want to comprehend this question, I just want to say some few words, maybe a few seconds of elevator pitch about what Ethiopia looks like. Ethiopia is a very huge country, maybe almost more than 100 million people. Because I want to tell you these facts so that you can comprehend with the question. The other Ethiopia has got 70% of Ethiopians are youth. The agings are 30%. We are different, actually. Most African countries have got youth, 60%, 70%. I just want to tell you again, we had 3 universities, maybe almost 20 years ago. Now we have 43 universities. You can imagine what the 43 universities can bring about. Every year we have got 120,000 graduates. This is very important so that you can comprehend what's going on. So this is the biggest number of Ethiopians, but the 70% of Ethiopians we want to lead the economy. So what's happening about the challenge, we can diversify the challenge in many ways, but I can just put it in 3 ways. The first is unemployment, because I told you that we have got 70% of youth, and we have got 120,000 graduates, and then unemployment is one of our biggest challenge. Our second challenge is the education system. Our education system is not creating entrepreneurs or innovators. Our education system has got a problem in quality. It's not preparing digitized individuals, because we believe that there is 2 changes, internal and external change. We believe education changes both ways, the inside and the outside. And if the rate of change outside of you is greater than what is inside, then you will perish. We believe that. In Africa, we believe that. Therefore, our youth are not changing, especially, they don't have an education that's preparing for life. That's one of our problems. Education is one of our problems. The unemployment is one of our problems. Now, right now, you can find a lot of Ethiopians here in Cairo expecting to go to Europe. The third one is unemployment, the education, and the gender inequality is also one of our problems. If I narrate, I can bring a lot of problems, but these are our challenges that we are facing right now. Or sometimes you can call the good governance as well. This is also a problem. Because if you have got customers and you have the civil servants, there is an expectation from the customer side So the way our civil servants are behaving are not the way the customers are expecting. Because you should have to behave the way the customer is expecting you. But we need a way of our thinking. That's what we believe. And also we have, now currently there is a political change, especially you know that what's going on in Ethiopia. Very dynamic change is going on, and maybe I can just quote one of our prime ministers was saying, women and youth are Africa's greatest untapped resource. We have to believe that. This needs way of thinking. We have to believe that the untapped resource are not, we are not expecting to have oil from the ground. We have got a resource in our hand that we didn't use it. Or not dreaming about the oil that we are going to have from under the ground. This is the way we have to think, and we have to change our way of thinking. Africa doesn't have resource limitation, but we have limitation in the way we are thinking. Therefore, these are the real problems that we are facing in Africa. Concerning the use, digital now in our universities, in our schools, maybe almost 3 or 4 weeks ago, I can tell you that we are changing our policy, education and training policy. There is a very big discussion in the country to change the policy because this policy doesn't bring something that you want out. We are not making happen what Ethiopia is looking for. Therefore, the education policy is not preparing. Now we have got vocational education which is booming and which we have already achieved very big results, especially vocational education program has created very, creative youths. They can create jobs, but still we need a way of thinking that youths should think to be an entrepreneur, very creative, and bring some value, adding value to a society. That's the way we are thinking. This is what we have in Africa. And therefore, maybe the other thing, we have got 70% of youths. Sometimes when we deal, this 70% of youths has to lead the economy. Rather, maybe in Ethiopia, in Europe, you see 30% youths are leading the 70% of the aging people. But in our system, in our country, this is the other way around. This is what's happening, and then these three are our problem: the unemployment, the education system, the gender, and particularly we can call about the good governance. These are what we are facing in our country. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, I'll stay with you, please. Now that I have you here, let us... Okay, I got the point. You're making the same mistakes we made before. Let's just build schools and build more schools and have more graduates and have more higher education graduates and then not find jobs for them because we are not taking the Singaporean model of matching the private sector as a government job to match the private sector with the graduates and balancing that out for 15, 20 years. We're not doing that in Egypt. And I think you are moving in the footsteps. Yes, it's impressive to say we've got X amount of schools and X amount of graduates. But thank you for, putting out the number that you have a very high level of unemployment as we had reached here for the same reasons. Point is, we have not created the environments yet that I would say are perfect for foreign direct investment. The opportunities are there. The bigger your risk appetite, like China, the more you will be willing and able to come in. The more that your investments are directed, let's say, through a government strategy rather than a private sector strategy, because I don't think Greg can convince any Kiwi businessman just because it's a government strategy, go to Africa and do that. I don't think it works there. But there are a lot of countries that would push that. Our problem, Your Excellency, how do you see our intra-trade, our intra-African investment and trade? I was looking at Egyptian investments in Ethiopia, and we had a conversation with Commercial International Bank, one of our leading financial institutions that, out of all the places in Africa that we've been, saying, we need intra-banking, we need financial connectivity, we need to have these transactions going on because we can't do business together. There's no connectivity of transportation networks and roads. In addition to that, there's no connectivity on our interbanking trade and financial markets, whether capital markets, whether banking institutions. But here we have an example of an Egyptian regional leading bank like Commercial International Bank looking at Ethiopia versus a lot of other places. What gives you the competitive advantage that such an organization as Commercial International Bank looks at Ethiopia specifically? Why not Togo? Why not Chad? Why not Rwanda? Why not Ivory Coast at this point? So what is attractive in Ethiopia today to Egyptian companies?
Maybe I can go back a bit and then I can tell you about the current change that is coming in Ethiopia. There is a political transition in Ethiopia now recently, and if that's going to be met, I think we're going to have more advantage than Egypt, because we are expecting to open banking, we are going to sell ICTs, share selling. We are about the Ethiopian Airlines shareholder for privatization. Yeah, it's good. If this happens, hopefully we are expecting that we're going to have, and all this is also happening now. Right now it's happening. Maybe transition takes, maybe you need the changes, need some time. But if we have, maybe if you don't have information, but maybe all parts are going to be liberalized now. We're expecting that's going to be liberalized. And when we have liberalized, I don't say that we're going to have much better advantage than Egypt, but we're going to have both. We'll have a good advantage in this area. The other good opportunity, good advantage we have is our labor force. One of the cheapest labor maybe you can find in our globe is our country. In our country, you can have the cheapest labor you can get is in Ethiopia, because you have got 70% of you don't have work. Therefore, that's why I say we had this problem. It was a very bottleneck for the investors to come to Ethiopia, to invest in Ethiopia. Now the PPP, public-private partnership, is now boosting in our country. Therefore, I think that is going to solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, very much. I have 10 minutes to go, and this session is now open for questions from the floor. So what I will do is I will take a message from each and every one of you, not as ambassadors and representatives of your presidents, but personally as fathers, mothers, citizens of your country, having been youth yourselves, seeing and being, open to things that are happening around us in education and youth empowerment. Like the Europeans, you have empower, connect, and engage. That's supposedly European strategy, and hopefully Ibrahim Lafi is going to be here on our next panel. I'll ask him more collectively what the European Union strategy is on global competitiveness. But Your Excellency, message. In this case, I would say global youth, not just African youth, not just Ethiopian youth.
I can say, like I mentioned, we have to believe that we have to give good preference for women and youth. We have to make kind of thought change. We have to make change or shift. We have to make a shift in that the greatest untapped resource are our youth and our women. And it's not the diamonds or oil and minerals that will be the foundation for solid, sustainable, and equitable progress for Africa and for the whole nation. Therefore, I would like to other nations to share their experience, especially in the area of digitalization and the AI, artificial intelligence. If this comes to Africa, I think that will create a very big change for our nation, and we can progress together. That's what I'm expecting. Therefore, that's my message. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, Ambassador Medlen.
Thank you. I would say the main message would be we have absolutely to give all priority to education. I think education is the key for development, for economic and social development, for the change in the mentalities that we need, for example, to address the problem of empowerment of women, to give new opportunities to youth people, and also to see these phenomena like immigration as an opportunity and not, not only as a challenge or a burden. So I would say education for the developed world, but also for the developing countries, is the real key to have a brighter future for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ambassador Craig.
Thank you. I think I would paraphrase our finance minister where he says the success of a country is not only about GDP, it's about the well-being of the populations there as well. So we have a saying in New Zealand. It's a saying from our first people, our indigenous people, the Māori. He aha te mea nunui o te eo, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. And that translates to what is the most important thing in the world? It is people, it is people, it is people. And I think for our youth, we have an obligation to ensure that they are as equipped as possible to face the challenges of the 21st century, because they are going to be very varied and they're going to be new. And I think we have an obligation to them and to our global community as well to ensure that the systems that we have in place best equip them for the future ahead.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Violent.
Thank you. If, as a parent, if I were to give a message to young people, it would be to be honest, be positive, to persevere, and everything will be all right in the end. If it's not all right, it's not the end yet.
Ambassador, please.
I have one worry and one message. My worry is that in 2019 budget, Egypt's expenditure for both health and education have actually gone down. So my message is education and health are two most important indicators for the future underlying growth of the country. So as a politician, I can understand you want to focus on now, but as a civil servant, you have to take a very long-term view where you want your country headed in the next 20, 30 years. I will put a lot more money in education and health.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your attentiveness. It's been such a pleasure having you. It's an absolute honor. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. We'll take a group photo and we'll move on to our next session.